think about. Death is swept under the carpet in our culture. In the hospital, they try to keep you alive from utter desperation. They won't take the nose, the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever. try to keep you alive utter desperation. They won't knows the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever. under the carpet in our country. In the hospital, they try to keep you alive from utter desperation. They won't take the mockery. Well, of course, we've made death howl with all kinds of ghouls. We've invented dreadful afterlives. I mean, the Christian version of heaven is as abominable as the Christian version of hell. Nobody wants to be in church forever.
I genuinely think the world went downhill when McDonald's took away the $2 sausage McGriddle off the all-day menu. Genuinely. Genuinely. People used to be happier. Now what? Now what? It's like $4? You used to be able to go to McDonald's at 5:47 p.m. and get a nice little sausage McGriddle for dinner for $2. Now what? It stops at 10:30? This is why people are depressed. This is why people are anxious. If maybe we could waltz up to a McDonald's at 7 p.m. and order a sausage McGriddle for $2 again, like we used to be, people would be happier. I think it would solve a lot of issues.
Clint's girlfriend is hangry. And he didn't feed her. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Luke Rudowski here of thebestpoliticalshow.com, as we are going to be going live for the next 2 hours with some of the most interesting, fascinating, and pretty funny conversations surrounding all the latest events that are unfolding right now, as of course there's a lot to talk about, especially when it comes to all the news coming out of Ukraine that some people say is unraveling. There's a lot of corruption that is being exposed. There's a lot of interesting information on Navalny released by the Ukrainians. Was there an assassination attempt on Tucker Carlson? Well, there's going to be a lot to discuss here, as of course we also got the news of Lord Jacob Rothschild's passing. We're going to be talking about that plus a lot more, all for the next 2 hours. So make sure to share this broadcast with your friends and family members. It is more imperative than ever, as of course you guys sharing the broadcast literally gets it out there to the general public. If it wasn't for you guys sharing these videos wouldn't be getting out there to the general conversation, and we greatly appreciate you guys doing that. All it takes is a double click, copy, paste, send it to someone, and it really does make the biggest difference when it comes to supporting independent media. Another way that you could support us and be a part of this conversation is by simply signing up to LukeUnfiltered.com, and then by doing so, you guys get the access and ability to call into the show and ask us whatever questions you want in about an hour and a half from now. So sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com. We're also going to be having a members-only meetup this Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, only for members of LukeUnfiltered.com. So, of course, you get many perks, many advantages, all just by becoming a member of LukeUnfiltered.com. My team will be sending that into the chat room right now, so you guys could very easily click on it. Another way that you guys could participate in the conversation is by going to mysuperchat.com, also something that is in our description, and your super chats actually get to show up on the screen, and there's only a 3% service charge on mysuperchats.com. If, of course, you use YouTube Super Chats or Rumble Rants, we, of course, will accept those, and we'll be trying to read all of those during this broadcast. But mysuperchats.com just absolutely outperform all of those other platforms, and we definitely appreciate all of your support, all of your participation in this independent media organization, as, of course, we strive for us to have the best political conversations, and this is why we call ourselves the bestpoliticalshow.com. And joining us for this conversation are two very interesting human beings from polar opposite locations inside of the United States. The first of which is Laverne Spicer. Laverne, for the people who might not know you, who are you and how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Laverne Spicer. A little about myself. I founded a program many years ago, 30 years ago, in my community, and I provide food, clothing, shelter for those that are in need, and we provide that service for over 1,500 people every week. And like I said, something I have been doing for a while. That's my passion. Helping others, especially people that are having a hard time making it through. So being that that's my passion, it led me to the doorsteps of politics. And that's why I decided to run for Congress. And thank you, Luke, for having me on today.
Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. You might be a representative of this very area, which would be really awesome to, of course, get to know more of your policies, more of your things that you would be implementing as a politician. So thank you so much for joining us. Another person joining us for this conversation is a man from the north, and that, of course, is Jay Noon. Jay, for the people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Jay Noon from New Hampshire, very active in the libertarian Free State movement up there. And my intention, my passion, what I'm working on now is reinstating confidence in mankind, basically by teaching young children how to earn their dopamine hits via learning skills. So when they become adults, they're useful, competent, and valuable. So they don't get into positions where they're needing to be, receiving food and, help from, organizations and or even the state. So my passion is to get people to convince people to invest in our invest in our posterity, and to make that a major priority. So that's pretty much what I'm about.
Jay Noon also took me in a couple years ago when New York City was under lockdown and showed me the way of life on the farm. So I appreciate Jay. We definitely do go back quite a while. We spent a lot of time together up in the free state of New Hampshire. Lots to discuss there, especially with all the current events. And Clint is also here. That last girlfriend is definitely an upgrade there, I have to say.
She's one of my favorites. Thank you, Luke, for acknowledging how good I'm doing in the dating market. Clint
Hey,
Russell.
he's a busy man. Okay, he's always. I'm like, hey, we got to do this. He's like, I'm busy. I'm busy. I can't do it. And I'm like, damn.
It's just. I mean, when you're dating a new girl every week, it's challenging. Clint Russell.
Give them a break, Clint. Like, come on. Like, there's none left for all the bachelors here.
Sometimes, according to Luke, I'm dating 3 new ones a week, so it's very, very aggressive. Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown, co-host of Tower Gang, which you should not watch, at Liberty Lockpod on X. If you want to support my work, you can subscribe there or follow me there. Liberty Lockdown on Instagram. And Liberty Lockdown used to be on YouTube, but I'm stuck right now, so make sure you don't miss me on Rumble. New episode dropping tonight. We got Steph on the buttons.
Steph, WeAreChange here on the buttons. And when Clint says you should not watch that show, I'm telling you don't, because I tuned in. I was curious. I did it. I wish I never did. I saw things I can never unsee.
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to be bringing that up on Rumble when we could discuss this freely, as of course, Stephanie has some very serious questions for Clint, which Clint should definitely answer. But let's just get right into the news, as of course, there's a lot that's unraveling right now when it comes to the United States involvement in Ukraine, as Mario Navalny just tweeted, quote, CIA Ukraine leak end is near. Now, this is according to Sputnik, a news organization tied to the Russian government. How much could we trust this actual source? Well, they're quoting a former CIA analyst, Larry Johnson, who allegedly said, quote, the leak's publication is a sign that the end is near for Ukraine. The rats are starting to leave the sinking ship. This is their way of saying that it's not the fault of the United States. You know, we did everything we could. It's these crazy Ukrainians, as there's been a lot of revelations, including the latest of one, according to the Russian government, of the Ukrainians trying to take out Tucker Carlson. Yes, there's a video from a Moscow man that was arrested by special Russian security forces that is on video, alleging to, of course, be working for the Ukrainians when it comes to plotting to put an explosive on Tucker Carlson's vehicle in order to, quote, take him out. This is a major story, a major bombshell. Everyone is talking about this. A lot of people are raising some concerns about the validity of this. Is this true? Is this not? Why is this information being released right now? Well, this has sparked a lot of interesting conversations. I don't know if you guys were able to kind of take a look at it, but I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of questions about this. What about you?
Well, my question would be, you got a guy who's claiming to be a Ukrainian agent. That sounds a little suspect to me right there, because you think that if he was actually trying to take out, somebody, he would, unless that was his job, to make it look like that's what he was, doing or attempting to do to sort of stir up things even more, because I think they need to get the American people more upset with Ukraine or with the Russia-Ukraine thing, because a lot of the people I talk to are like, we don't want this war. We don't want. I don't know anybody who wants any money funding the Ukraine war. That's an American myself. So I think that this is just to, drive a wedge harder maybe, or to get more support for the war.
Yeah, my question automatically from this was, is Ukraine really willing to go as far as to take out America's previous #1 news anchor? And if they actually did go through with this plot, this would, of course, anger a lot of Americans who they need to, of course, to finance their larger military operations. As, of course, right now, the Ukrainian government is asking the United States for $60 billion, as the United States military empire is literally bringing out paid actors to make videos saying, hey, guys, give Ukraine more money so they could fight this pointless war that many military strategists say that they can't frickin' win here. So there's a lot at play here. There's a lot of negotiations. The government is still trying to give them $60 billion. And Laverne, just to ask you, if you were a U.S. representative, would you give $60 billion to Ukraine?
No, and I don't think that they should be getting any more of our taxpayer dollars? What about the American people? What about the veterans that are staying in the streets that are homeless? We need to put this country first. We need to put them taxpayers first and stop sending all the dollars to Ukraine to support that country.
Absolutely. And when looking at this specific story here, I again have so many questions because it's like, why would they jeopardize everything? But then you look at what happened to Gonzalo Lira, a person who was a critic of the Ukrainian regime, who, of course, was imprisoned. According to his own accords, he was tortured, and then he was, of course, released, in prison again, and then died in custody under the Ukrainian government that, of course, didn't really give us a lot of answers to what really happened to him, as, of course, he came out and said, hey, if I get arrested again, it's going to mean that my life is going to be over. I'm going to be losing my life if I get in prison again. He was in prison again, and of course, there hasn't been a lot of kind of recognition of this. The corporate media in America hasn't even really talked about an American citizen that died in Ukrainian custody, as there are some very serious questions and allegations that, of course, are raised at the Ukrainian government's treatment of him. And the only person who really did care about this was individuals like Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy, and a lot of people on the right. But overall, the people on the left have been silent about this. When a journalist, a commentator, someone who, again, is an American citizen, lost their life in Ukraine, and then the American people just don't care about this, did the Ukrainian people think, hey, maybe we could get away with this? I say, and I should fix myself, because it's not the Ukrainian people. It's essentially the Ukrainian oligarchs, the bureaucrats, the people who are connected to the U.S. intel agencies that have been working with the Ukrainian bureaucrats for over a decade now when it comes to, of course, creating this larger war against Russia. What were the Ukrainians thinking here? I don't know, Clint, but that's something that I'm asking myself.
Well, I think that the obvious rationale would have been that their plan, assuming this story is legitimate, which, as we detailed just a second ago, we're not sure. It's very early reporting, but if it's legitimate, I think that it would have been ran as an op to blame the assassination attempt on Russia to try and bolster support amongst the American people for additional aid to Ukraine. Because obviously, had Russia actually been responsible for that, I would have been the first going like, that's terrible. That's absolutely.
But no one would have blamed Russia. Everyone would have blamed Ukraine for trying to stop this interview. And if you look at the Ukrainians and their unconventional warfare, they have taken out journalists, they have taken out YouTubers, they have taken out very prominent political commentators in Russia for voicing their political expressions against Ukraine. So they did this before, and if Tucker Carlson would have been affected by this, I think everyone automatically would have been like, that's Ukraine who did this.
I mean, I think that you and I would have. I think that the narrative, assuming this story is true, I think that the narrative would have been that Russia was responsible, or some sort of revolutionary element within Russia was responsible. I don't think that it would have been laid at the feet of Ukraine. Now to Luke's point earlier about how no one seems to care about Gonzalo Lira, I'd also like to point out that the Democrats, by and large, don't discuss Julian Assange. They don't talk about Edward Snowden. They don't talk about really any sort of press freedom or speech rights or anything like that. This is really a relic of a Democratic Party that has perished long ago. So I think that it's time for people to just acknowledge, like, the best lefties I know have all left the Democratic Party because they are so disgusted with it, because they don't care about press rights. They don't care about press freedom. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they've turned a blind eye to both Julian Assange as well as Gonzalo Lira.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at this story right now that is being reported from predominantly Russian sources, we have allegedly a confession from this guy. We have a video of this guy saying specifically that he was given the task to put an explosive device under the car of Tucker Carlson, and he then details how his plan was thwarted, as, of course, when he was working on it, he was detained during the, quote, preparation stages. So,
Luke, the reason my rationale, like, I'm trying to understand your logic here. If the Ukrainians were actually plotting to do this, and is it your impression that they would have taken credit for it had it succeeded? Because
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
Just like I mean, if you look at what happened to Dugin and his daughter. Specifically, they were taken out in a very kind of similar fashion. An explosive underneath the car that was supposed to be meant for Dugan, but took out his daughter. And then we all saw, of course, those videos and those photos on social media of Dugan kind of grabbing his head after he saw, a very tragic scene that unfolded for everyone, showing, the people of Russia that, even political commentators are going to be targeted here with this unconventional warfare and this kind of subversive warfare that's been waged against them.
But I'm saying, like, it seems as if this plot's legitimate, that it would have to be that the Ukrainians were planning to do it so that they can then point the finger at Russia, because the only way that this actually pays any dividends is if the American people are then convinced that Russia's responsible for taking out, like, the people that have been hesitant about continuing to fund this war have been largely the libertarian community, as well as like the dissident right, the America First folks. So it seems as if you're going to do a propaganda war, which is what we're in the midst of, the only incentive they would have to do so would be to try and sell the American people on the idea that what Russia and specifically Putin was responsible. Then all of a sudden that aid package flies through. That's the rationale that I see.
I don't see that as kind of rational here, because it's like, I think everyone would see right through it right away. When Dugin's daughter was taken out, everyone automatically was like, yeah, this is the Ukrainian intel services connected to, of course, the CIA that essentially did this. There was another YouTuber that was targeted. He was given a statue of himself with an explosives in it. And during a public talk in Russia, that explosive was, of course, blown up, taking his life as well, highlighting how this kind of unconventional warfare has been waged by the Ukrainians. And it's also important to note here that those individuals that I mentioned, including some prominent Americans and Tucker Carlson himself, were actually put on an enemies of Ukraine list from an NGO, non-state funded government organization in Ukraine. So Ukrainian activists did put Tucker Carlson a few weeks ago a part of their enemies of Ukraine list, which some of those members on those lists were specifically targeted and had their lives taken by Ukrainian proxies and Ukrainian individuals tied to their intelligence agency.
I know we're kind of going in a circle, but I'll just end with this. They tried to say that Russia was responsible for blowing up Nord Stream pipeline, which was one of their primary exports, which produced billions of dollars worth of revenue for them. They simply don't care about the logic. They were just trying to force feed a narrative to try and galvanize the American people, or at least get them to acquiesce to these demands for additional aid packages. That's my read of it. I'm just very grateful that it failed, or that it was fake or whatever. It would have been absolutely catastrophic for relations with that entire region of the world had they actually succeeded.
I mean, I think everyone looks at the Nord Stream pipeline and they're like, there's no way Russia did this to themselves. This doesn't make any sense at all. Even though that's what they ran with. But I think it was pretty clear as soon as it happened, like, hey, they're sabotaging a larger kind of trade between Russia and Germany that they're very fearful of. And a lot of people believe that this kind of aggressive action against Russia is predominantly so they don't become too aligned with Germany and match their kind of engineering power with the natural resources that Russia has. But what would be, let's ask you guys, what would be your reaction if Tucker Carlson lost his life in an explosion of his car in Moscow? How would you guys respond?
Well, I would feel bad about him losing his life, but I feel like this is a bunch of propaganda, that's coming out, and that they're just making up stuff, trying to start another war. How many times have we heard about mass insurrections and insurrection and all this kind of stuff, in order for them to validate the next move that they was getting ready to make on the company. So for number one, I have a problem with that, and I don't believe it.
I think it's could be a false flag psyop, kind of like what the American intelligence agencies do, where they'll set up some guy who's a little tweaked already to go do some terrorist act, and then the FBI will all of a sudden stop it at the last minute. And so this could, just so they can, get the credit. It's kind of like the firefighter who's got no work setting houses on fire so he can, remind the people why they need him. Yeah. And so if this guy who put this bomb on the car that Tucker Carlson was, going to be in was actually a Russian agent, claiming to be a Ukrainian agent, and then you get the Russian, agencies being like, "Look, we stopped this guy before this actually happened." That feels more like what's going on, to me. But me personally, I think Tucker Carlson could be also, part of the agenda to sort of steer America hard to the right. I think we're going to see a massive pendulum swing to the right, which is going to be, just as bad as a massive pendulum swing to the left. And like Laverne says, I believe it's a psyop. I believe it's it's all it's a horse and pony show, dog and pony show.
Why would you think that about Tucker, given that he had the #1 nightly news show and he was essentially, he wasn't fired, he was basically shelved, but he ended up starting his own. I mean, they never expected that he was going to be able to have a more significant audience than he had on Fox News.
I just don't trust anybody that gets to that level of power, that has that kind of influence. And I like everything Tucker has to say. I don't disagree with the guy, but you
just don't trust him.
I just don't trust anybody that far up. I mean,
sure.
Maybe because actually Tucker has kids, for example, and he's a family man. He is might be one of the most trustworthy people, in there. And that's one of the things I like about Vivek. He says a lot of things that are great and wonderful, but I have a hard time trusting a guy who, is getting that much attention. But the fact that he's a family man, means a lot to me. But I'm just skeptical of anybody who's, getting this kind of attention.
Yeah, I don't trust no man, but God. But you always judge a man by the fruits of his labor. And if you look at Vivek, if you look at Tucker Carlson, their fruits that they're laying bare to the American public is something that is very rare, something that we should appreciate, something that, of course, I'm very happy that they're providing, since they're taking very significant risks, as we're learning from this story coming from Russia about the potential assassination attempt on him. He's taking a lot of risks, not listening to the intel agencies who told him, you better not interview Vladimir Putin, you better stop doing this. And he just said, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway because you told me not to. His stance, especially when it came to medical freedom and information, when it came to one of the biggest advertisers on Fox News, and when it came to facing the military-industrial complex, the big pharma industrial complex, he had tremendous amount of courage, and I believe has made a significant positive impact on the American people. And personally, just getting to know him a little bit, I think he's the real deal. Looking him in the eyes, having a frank, honest, off-the-record conversation with him, I think he's absolutely the real deal. And I'm a lot happier that he's out there than nobody else being out there myself.
Well, I've never met the guy, and Luke, you got to meet him, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing I got to say about Luke, as long as I've known Luke, pretty much Luke's commentary on everybody he's ever commented on has been super accurate. So,
I mean, that's not good news for me.
if he's not joking around, I guess.
Well, I'm always joking around, and I think a lot of people realize that as well. But no, and especially on Clint. Clint deserves it though. But talking about the man of the hour, Tucker Carlson, just a couple hours ago, also tweeted, quote, "So a CIA-backed Ukrainian intel office official is now telling us that actually, Navalny did die of natural causes. You got to wonder what's going on here. Quote, it's pretty obvious," as he's quoting an article and an official statement from the Ukrainian military specifically detailing how Alexei Navalny, the man who, of course, was imprisoned by Vladimir Putin, died of natural causes of specifically a blood clot. Now, I automatically have a question about some of his kind of personal medical procedures that he might have been involved in that we can't talk about here on YouTube, but this is very telling to what's going on here, as, of course, Mike Benz was tweeting about this as well. And it definitely does seem like there's a larger kind of unraveling of these official stories, of the official narratives that were being told specifically about this conflict. And the Ukrainians coming out and saying this. We'll play you the clip here that is very eye-opening, to say the least, specifically at this specific time juncture.
Я можу вас розчарувати, але те, що нам відомо, він реально загинув від тромба.
Yeah, we do know that, of course, he had a blood clot. Now, I don't know what you guys make of this latest news, but this is pretty big news. This is pretty significant, as, of course, the corporate media has been running with this Navalny narrative for a very long time. They've been talking about him. They've been praising him. It's almost as if he's an American citizen. It's almost as if he actually did some good for the American people, when in all actuality, he was a kind of far-right nationalistic figure that they don't like to talk about his internal kind of politics or internal beliefs, but they do like to talk about him being, of course, the enemy of Vladimir Putin. There's just a lot of inconvenient facts now that are around his life that are unraveling for some strange reason.
Yeah, I mean, Navalny was no joke to the right, like the far right of Donald Trump. And the American media was trying to portray him as some sort of, I don't know, liberal scion. It's absolutely laughable.
Peacenik, flower waving, blue armpit haired liberal.
I mean,
he wasn't.
Yeah, it's just totally a lie. If you actually look at his rhetoric, I showed some of his campaign clips on Liberty Lockdown. It's like, this dude was a real hardline nationalist in a way that many people that are concerned about racism would not have liked him. So I honestly believe that he was either CIA or MI6 supported and backed. And I honestly, my read of this is very off the board, but I think what's happening is that the U.S. is pulling support from Ukraine. They're trying to exit, and I think that they probably told this medical examiner for Ukraine, look, just tell the truth. Like, this guy, do not put this on Putin. We're trying to back out. That's my read of it. I have no clue. I have no clue what actually happened to the guy. It could, as Luke said, it could be personal medical decisions. It could be a lot of things, but I do not believe for a second that Putin was responsible for his passing. That's my read.
It could be a kind of sign of good faith by the Ukrainians to be like, hey, Putin, we kind of want to negotiate here. Hey, Putin, we kind of want you to be at the table when we negotiate a truce deal. As, of course, the situation is not looking good for the Ukrainians. They're asking for, again, $60 billion. And the American people are saying, hey, we have a lot of other serious issues and concerns here. Laverne, you watch the kind of political sphere more than kind of anyone else. What do you think is going to be happening next with Ukraine? Do you think there's going to be a peace deal? Do you think the Democrats are going to be holding on to this war until the presidential elections are over? Since if they lose this one during an election cycle, this is going to be detrimental extremely to the Democrats. How do you see this kind of unfolding from your kind of sphere of influence?
Well, one thing I see coming is definitely the Biden administration is going to be pushing to give Ukraine another $60 billion. That's one thing I see happening. And also, you can't always trust the press. You can't always believe everything that you're seeing on TV or everything that you're reading, because a lot of times it depends on who is behind it. Like Soros, we know Soros put up a lot of dollars. You know, he bought out a lot of radio stations here in Miami to push his narrative. So a lot of times it depends on who is behind what and pushing that narrative.
Yeah, there's so much disinformation. There's so much propaganda, and now this like onslaught of information about Ukraine. Again, it's making me wonder, hey, what's the longer play here? What's really going on here? As I think there's also a potential of a legitimate attempt that was made on the life of Tucker Carlson, that now a lot of Americans are like saying, hey, this is our red line here. You guys passed it. We're mad at you. And now we're going to be exposing a lot of your corruption, a lot of how wrong you guys got this, and all the mistakes that you guys were making here along the way. As, of course, we even got video footage of the former head officer of a regional Ukrainian military recruitment office being caught with $1 million in cash in shoeboxes. As, of course, Ukrainian politicians are known for their corruption. They're known for taking bribes. They're known for taking deals. And this is why a lot of very dangerous gain-of-function research was specifically conducted inside of Ukraine that also is linked to a lot of very nefarious characters here within the United States, as a lot of this has the direct involvement of the CIA here that I think is far more involved than a lot of of Americans understand them to be. And we're also finding that out with also the other stories that are being released by the corporate media. The New York Times released a very eye-opening kind of piece detailing the CIA's secret fight that lasted more than a decade inside of Ukraine. But again, everything that's happening, all the video footage, all the revelations, the Ukrainians actually saying something that's rational about Putin. Again, strange world we're living in, but I think it's up to us to put the pieces together because something isn't as they say it is.
So, from what I understand, this Ukrainian operation has been nothing more than basically a money laundering operation, just getting U.S. taxpayers' dollars into Ukraine. It goes back to there's stories where they're buying U.S. treasuries, they're funding campaigns of certain political guys, and so this Ukrainian operation is like a parasite that has a short cycle, and it looks like the cycle might end with Biden not getting in back in the White House. So we know the Biden crime family has been bought and paid for over and over again for a very long time by these Ukrainian, companies like Burisma and, Ukrainian politicians. I mean, you even got, crazy old Joe just bragging about it because he can't help himself. He's one of those guys. And so if this is going to end with, in 2024 with Biden not being in there, these guys got to really try hard to for their last hurrah to really push this money through to just extract whatever they can. It's almost like, the Titanic's going down and these guys are just filling their pockets with all the silverware before they get on the lifeboats.
Well, that sounds like an apt metaphor for our own country, and that's what it feels like the American political class is doing as well, which is why I am a libertarian. But I would like to ask Laverne about this actually, because my read of things is that the entire Russian collusion narrative was propagated because they were trying to get propagandize the American people into being on a war footing with Russia and against and to be perceived enemies with Vladimir Putin. I also think that the reason that they impeached Trump for the first time was because he made that call to Zelensky where he was trying to figure out about the Biden shenanigans in Ukraine. It seems to me that this has been an op that's been ran for a decade, and Trump ran afoul of it. He never seemed to have gotten to the bottom of it. He doesn't really talk about it very much. I'm just curious if you think that broadly the congressional members understand what I'm describing here, that in fact Ukraine was a CIA op. It was a color revolution in Maidan in 2014, and that the Biden family, along with the Mitt Romneys of the world and many Nancy Pelosi, many American politicians have been profiting by having their family members reap the rewards of the corruption there. Do you think that is there any hope that Congress actually ever sees fit to, research and investigate this sincerely, or are they all so dirty that they never will?
At this point, I actually am not sure if Congress even cares. It's like these people that are in Congress, they're no longer working for the people. It's all about whatever they want and for their self-interest. A lot of times the laws that those congressional people make, it's not going to affect them the way that it's going to affect us. So I'm sure that they have the proper intel that's going to let them know what's going on so that they are aware, but
they just don't care.
When it comes to voting and everything, they're going to go with whatever they are told to do by their donors that's funding their campaign. Right. So at the end of the day, I'm not so sure that it even matters to a lot of them.
I sadly agree.
We got some super chats here from Based Joe. Some people would pronounce his name a little differently, but I read it Based Joe, saying, quote, "I'm just here to give you money." He gave another one saying, "Anomaly labeling Vivek conservative GPT was pretty accurate." I wasn't familiar with that one. I don't know if you are, Clint, yourself.
Yeah.
Is he critical of Vivek, or did he not like him? Okay.
Yeah, he thinks that he made money off of a pump and dump pharma scheme, blah, blah, blah. I've already dug deep on this, and Anomaly and I are good friends. We've gone back and forth on this. We're just not going to agree on this one.
Based Joe gave another super chat saying Ukraine is a meat grinder for Western resources, and that meat grinder probably will be expanding as, of course, some European Union nations are literally talking about sending their soldiers over to fight the Russians inside of Ukraine. And that, again, crazy, insane escalations here. I think this could go any way, but I think it's fair to say we're definitely going down the wrong road when it comes to dealing with this conflict. I think a lot of people in politics have absolutely failed us, and as of right now, Congress is I can't believe I'm saying this, and Laverne, correct me if I'm wrong here. They're one of the few peoples that are actually standing up for the American people, and they're not passing this spending bill. They're not passing this Ukrainian bill, which looks like won't pass. Do you think it will?
I hope it won't. I mean, we're tired. As American taxpayers, we are sick and tired of seeing our dollars go to the Ukraine when it's needed right here in this country to help people that need it the most, the working class.
Well, no disagreement here. My concern, and actually I'll extrapolate on my thesis that I detailed with Laverne a few minutes ago. I also think this is the reason that they ran all the ops that they did to get Trump out of office before his second term, from Hunter's laptop to a litany of things that I probably am not allowed to talk about on this particular platform.
But yeah, the intel agencies were like, yeah, we want to start a war with Russia. We don't like Trump. Let's blame all of Russia on Trump.
Exactly.
And let's do this predictive programming where we get the American people really angry at Russia through, of course, the political division that they sowed in this country with the corporate media. So this has been a plan for a very long time, over a decade.
Yes, and specifically, who were they targeting? They were targeting the Democrats, who are usually the non-interventionists or the anti-war camp, historically, not in recent memory. And I think that it was an overt attempt it was psychological warfare against the Democrats. I mean, the people that are watching CNN and MSNBC every night, they still believe that Donald Trump, orange
Man bad.
it was foisted upon them because of Vladimir Putin. It doesn't matter that it's not true. They were told this lie for 5 years straight. And even when it came out that it wasn't true, you still have many politicians that will go on national television and insinuate that it was the case. It's flatly false. It is an outright lie. But why did they do it? Because now you have a tremendous amount of political support from the Democrats, the people who are usually not pro-war, and they are all salivating to go after Vladimir Putin. It's not an accident.
Yeah. And this is why this story from the New York Times a couple of days ago is such a major freaking big deal. As, of course, they wrote an article talking about the spy war, quote, how the CIA secretly helps Ukraine fight Putin, as the official narrative has changed, as David Sachs points out, and says the idea that the CIA has been deeply involved in Ukraine for over a decade, waging a secret war against Russia, is no longer a conspiracy theory. And that is a major revelation, as, of course, through this New York Times piece, we found out that the CIA built 12 secret spy bases inside of Ukraine and waged shadow war for at least a decade. And if you remember, after the 2014 Maidan Revolution, there was a lot of really horrible things that were done, not only to the people of Ukraine, but specifically to all the Russian-speaking territories that were essentially at war. This war in Ukraine didn't just start with Russia's invasion of it, as, of course, there was already conflict, there was already fighting, there was already bullets and bombs being thrown on each side in the Donetsk region inside of Ukraine for over 10 years now. Now this conflict escalated, it spilled over, it involves Russia, and it involves the United States that are fighting each other in the proxy that is Ukraine. This is indirect war, leaving a lot of people to question what's going to happen if it becomes a direct war between Russia and the United States. As I think it's fair to say, that's already happening here. And that should be something that a lot of people shouldn't be comfortable with, as there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of nuclear weapons, but there wasn't even a discussion here. There wasn't even a vote here. There wasn't even a politician coming to the American people and saying, you know what, Ukraine's in our best interest. We want the democratic policy to be here, that you guys vote and support our initiatives here in Ukraine. No one did that. This was secret, covert operations by the CIA that, of course, undermined America's interests, undermined the people of Ukraine, and waged a secret war that expanded and blew up and now is ever so expanding in Europe. extremely dangerous situation, extremely reckless situation that they didn't even vote for, which is crazy.
Sounds like tyranny to me, because it sounds like these politicians just have no fear whatsoever of the people. And it wasn't what Thomas Jefferson said. Tyranny is when the politicians fear the people, and tyranny is when the people fear the politicians, and liberty is where the politicians fear the people. And clearly the politicians are not afraid with this, absolute just chaotic looting of American resources and money and stacking up the debt, and they're not, and they're proud of it. And these guys are bragging about it, and not much is really happening.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I fear the politicians tremendously, deeply. I mean, just look at what happened with the J6er. I think it was in Florida. They were pulling him out again, and I think he was a military veteran or a cop or something like that. It's absolutely evil what's happening, and I think that if you look back to the early days of the USSR, this is kind of what they went through, and I just feel like people are sleepwalking through all of this. They're not paying attention to how dangerous this all is, and that's just the domestic issues that I'm talking about. If you extrapolate and you start to focus on the potential for World War III, it's astronomically dangerous. I mean, it is genuinely existential what we're facing, and it's all predicated on lies. Did they try, as Luke pointed out, did they try and have a address to the nation where they actually lay out the case? No, they didn't, because they couldn't. Because they don't have the facts on their side. They would have had to have lied so egregiously, and they didn't want to have Biden on record doing that. So what did they do instead? They used the media cutouts. They used the media apparatus to just go around propagating CIA talking points, and then they turn around and they shame you, and they call you a coward, and they call you a traitor, and they call you all of these un-American nonsense. It's totally BS. From Jump Street, this was an absolute and outright lie meant to not just profit the military-industrial complex, but also for the most corrupt, reprehensible politicians in American history to get rich. And they got rich, and no one seems to care.
Laverne, what's your take on the CIA? Because it definitely seems like they're an unaccountable bunch that just get to do whatever they want. And we've known that they've been doing this for a very long time, especially when it came to the crack epidemic, when it came to Iran-Contra, when it came to MKUltra, when it comes to all the other secret, crazy experiments and wars and governments that they toppled throughout the last few years. Is there anything that Congress could even do against this secretive, shadowy kind of organization that, as of right now, we're finding out also helped start this war in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, it's not just the CIA, it's all three-letter agencies.
Facts.
It's a problem, and that's a fact. That's a fact. They come after who they want to come after. A lot of them seem like most of them just work for Hillary, because what we have seen in the past is that people that went against her, they died. We had a family that stopped working for her, and all of them drowned in 3 foot of water in a swimming pool. So, it's just like they just target whoever they want to target. And we are always seeing double standards. Everything is a double standard. Look how they went after Trump. But what happened to Biden with those records that he had? Nothing. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Nothing. So they just targeting whoever it is they choose to target.
It begs the question, would you support abolition of the CIA and the FBI for what they've done?
Yes.
I love it. You got my vote.
Yes, I would.
And to speak on this, this Ukraine war, there's no vote. The people don't get a choice. The politicians have been getting away with this for decades. So I was like 9 years old when the Desert Storm thing happened. That was another undeclared war. Just going in and just wiping out a whole bunch of. They killed 500,000 babies. All parts of Iraq and that part of the world are just covered in depleted uranium. You can't do anything with it. You can't live on the land. You can't drink the water. You can't farm it. And they just keep on pushing the card harder and harder and harder, because how many people went to state after school for detention in the Bush administration over this? Did anything happen to him? No. Did anything happen to Obama for all the people that he killed with the Predator drones? All over wherever. And then you had and Reagan was doing the same thing in Central and South America, Nicaragua, under John Bolton and guys like that. None of those. Nobody stayed after school for detention. Nobody lost their house. Nobody's in prison. And this is what happens when, for generations after generations, and this is on all levels of government, not only the national level, but also your state and local level with qualified immunity. You have generations of child protection social workers, for example, now that are covered under qualified immunity that are literally trafficking children. They are, putting children in homes where there's known pedophiles. And this is not just like in one state. This is broad everywhere. And nobody's getting fired unless literally they're caught like on video doing unspeakable things with children. And this is because that culture of what I call the parasite class, all government employees with this enjoying this qualified immunity, they're just getting away with it and getting away with it. And then all of a sudden you have, people like Hunter Biden who can just do whatever they want. They can, all the horrible things that he's done, he makes videos of, and he's another guy that brags about because he's never gotten disciplined. For example, no children of state troopers and very powerful attorneys are they're getting multiple DUIs. They never go to jail. They beat their wives. Nothing ever happens. I mean, this is just on all levels in the United States and across the world with the power class.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Joe Biden definitely didn't do a good job with Hunter Biden, raising him as a son. And the guy can't even raise dogs. The guy could barely operate. The guy could barely freaking walk. He could barely freaking talk. And when you look at everything that he has done so far, specifically, it shows you a parent that was absolutely freaking horrible to his son. As of course, we also have the Biden daughter diary that James O'Keefe got raided by the FBI for. That also has some very telling stories. But hey, at least Hunter Biden got a lucrative contract from Burisma Oil in Ukraine that, of course, is known for selling a lot of positions in power to, of course, prominent politicians. The Pelosi's were able to get a contract. The Clintons were able to get a contract. All the Democratic politicians were able to get a piece of the cake that, of course, is Ukraine, and all the resources and all the money that, of course, has been slowly and surely sifted away from the people there who had to deal with just the most corrupted government officials on planet Earth. As, of course, now this conflict might even be expanding, as the Financial Times is reporting how the NATO chief is saying that Ukraine joining NATO is inevitable. This is a major revelation. This is a major announcement, as the Telegraph reports that NATO and EU member states are now considering sending troops to Ukraine. No, this is not a drill. No, this is not a joke, as of course now former Rothschild banker Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, just said he does not rule out sending troops to Ukraine. Quote, "We will do whatever it takes to ensure that Russia cannot win this war." As of course, if this happens, this means that this is just a full, all-out war between the West and the East. As of course, other countries like Iran, China most likely will be joining Russia here when it comes to, of course, using Ukraine as the battleground proxy that it is here. A major admission by the French here, who don't have the best military record. I'll just leave it at that. But Europe, again, is a continent filled with lots of bloodshed, lots of war, and it looks like history is repeating itself in very devastating ways, because already the Ukrainian population has been obliterated. A whole entire generation of young men is gone. They are already using mercenaries from Latin America, from countries like Colombia, and still that's not enough. As of course, the Russians keep sending waves and waves of men into Ukraine, and the Ukrainians just simply don't have enough manpower. Now, there's going to be French soldiers fighting in Ukraine. That, again, is highlighting just another escalation that is leading towards world war that many historians will look back on and say was actually started in 2014.
How much you want to bet that the Macron is yet another one of those politicians that got filthy rich with shady business deals in Ukraine? I would just say you should look into it. That's all I'll say. But to add to Luke's point about the potential for world war, you also have to throw in the mix Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, potentially Brazil, the entire BRICS alliance. We don't know which way they'll go. This is extraordinarily dangerous. As I said earlier, I feel like we're sleepwalking our way into World War III. This is why I have the same exact opinion on the Israel-Palestine conflict as I do on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I want to defund it. I do not want to be involved. Any leverage that the American political class is still maintaining ought to be utilized to try and request a negotiated peace settlement and a ceasefire. That is the only moral answer, particularly given that we have helped foment these conflicts. It's vitally important that we de-escalate. Vladimir Putin has made it very clear for over 10 years now, as Luke is actually pulling up the clip right now, which I tweeted out yesterday. It went super viral. This was 2 weeks before the invasion into Ukraine, in which he said that once again, which he said, he also told privately to Condoleezza Rice and the current head of the CIA in Burns that this is the red line of all red lines. If you add Ukraine into NATO, it is World War III. He said it 2 weeks before they invaded Ukraine. In fact, the New York Times article said as much, that this is exactly why they invaded, is because they realized that the CIA was running lots of things that we're not allowed to talk about until we get into Rumble. This is why he invaded. It's awful.
We're almost very close to being on Rumble, but the clip that, of course, we have pulled up here has Vladimir Putin saying, quote, "If Ukraine joins NATO and attempts to bring Crimea back by military, it means the European countries will automatically be pulled into a war conflict with Russia." And already, I mean, we have a lot of NATO military supplies. Why not their soldiers? And of course, why not a global war? Why not a nuclear war? Which, again, that's the trajectory that we're on. And to me, that's a ridiculous trajectory, as of course, we don't have our priorities straight. There's a lot of things here domestically inside of the United States that we don't have right, that we need fixed, that we need to have addressed. And we're not doing any of that. Why? Because we're playing regime change in Europe. Why are we playing regime change in Europe? Why are so many young Ukrainian men not alive anymore? Why have they lost their lives? As of course, everyone should be asking themselves this question, looking at the larger picture of what's really unfolding and going on here, because it is just absolutely a tragedy unfolding right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and it sounds like, when I was a young man, I'm in my 40s. When I was in my teens and 20s, the enemy was all these Muslim countries. And now we have all of these migrants that have been flooding into all of Europe for several years now. There seems to be an issue there, and needs to be, somebody needs to put them to work or do something with them. And if you wanted to sort of draft those guys or incentivize or somehow buy all these migrants to be your soldiers, your mercenaries to go to war with somebody, it's not likely they would go to a war with a Muslim country so long ago. So now they had to pick a country that's not Muslim, which is Russia. So I'm thinking if the European, allies need to come up with a whole bunch of soldiers, they're going to be looking at all these fighting age men who don't have families and children that have come into their country, who are looking for something to do, looking for a paycheck, that won't fight a Muslim country. So they picked a non-Muslim country to go to war with.
Interesting.
And I talk a lot about being valuable, making sure your children are valuable, because when the draft comes, and we could all see a draft in our lifetime, everybody in this room, even right here in this country, because the recruiting rates are down. But when I talk about being valuable, the reason that Smith is the largest family name, the largest last name in the Western world, is because when all these countries years ago, thousands of years ago and hundreds of years ago, when they went to war, and in the English culture, if you were your last name, your family name was whatever your trade was. So if you were a blacksmith, for example, and you got drafted, you didn't go to the front lines because you were super valuable. You were the guy that was making the armor, making the swords. So all these, sort of useless, soy boy, latte sipping, computer, operating at Starbucks boys that don't have any real world skills, guess where you're going? You're going to the front lines because you are the least valuable. But if you're someone who is like a mechanic, a machinist, you're not going to the front line because they're going to put you in, the factories, that are protected to essentially, build the munitions if they can get you. But hopefully nobody signed up for selective service. I'll tell you, I never signed up for selective service, and neither did any of my brothers and a whole bunch of my other family members. There's no law that requires you to put your signature on any document, so maybe they won't come draft you. But I suspect that there's going to be places where when they draft you, there's going to be a whole bunch of people like in America in regions of the country that are going to be willing to go to war because they've been starving and they have no way to defend themselves and they have no real life skills to really do anything. And then there's going to be places in the country where their people are heavily armed, they're skilled, and they're going to refuse to be drafted. So it's going to get real interesting if there's a draft.
Well, if there's a draft, and there's a potential that there might be, because a lot of young men are not suitable for enlistment because of because they're fat and because of their mental disorders. But I definitely do see a lot of feminists becoming trad wives automatically if there is a draft. And I do see a lot of older men being drafted as, of course, they deal with less kind of physical ailments than the new younger generation who can't stop with their douche flutes, who can't stop eating Skittles. Excuse me. Sorry. I just decided to pan the camera on you
I'll be
for
the
no
average
reason.
age of a Ukrainian conscript too. So.
But yeah, right now, if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, what's the age of enlistment now? 65, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong here.
The average soldier, I think, is 42 or something like that now. It's wild.
There was just absolute horrific video of Ukrainian soldiers just trying to be entertained by a musical performer, and just the looks on their face and just how old these guys are really just kind of tells you everything you need to know about this war and how it's going for the Ukrainians. Laverne, you had something to say?
Well, like you said, the cap is 40. What are we going to do with all of these illegals that are coming here?
I think they're going to offer him citizenship to enlist. I really do.
There was a congressional proposal by a Democrat and a Republican saying that if you want U.S. citizenship and you're an illegal that walked through the border, you could do that by military service. Is that something that, Laverne, you would vote for, or something you would not vote for?
Oh, yeah, I would support that. I mean, if they're coming here, what exactly are they going to do, you know? But be a liability on this country, so why not enlist? I would feel maybe safer in a sense with them than to have a whole bunch of drag queens going in.
Well, a lot of people also kind of question, the random kind of MS-13 members, the random Venezuelans, the random people from China walking through the border and now kind of joining our military. As of course, a lot of people have very serious questions and concerns about that, as a lot of people are saying, hey, if you give them an access to citizenship, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be getting it that way. And therefore, you're going to be changing the dynamic politically where Republicans won't ever be in power ever again, since a lot of new immigrants predominantly overwhelmingly vote for the Democratic Party.
But they are here, and the Republicans wasn't the one that opened up the border. This was, all of this happened on Joe Biden watch.
I think allowing these immigrants to do military service for citizenship is very much a double-edged sword, because from what I never did military service. One of my best friends was in the special forces, and what he told me was that basically the guys that he was training, the guys that would come in, and he went actually into the military because it was go to military or go to jail. So that was the option. So he said it was a bunch of rednecks from out in the country who had all kinds of problems, and he said it was a bunch of inner city kids who had all kinds of problems, and they went into the military. But one thing that these guys had no interest in doing was turning their guns on their own people, whether it be people in the city or people out in the country. That wouldn't be hard to do for someone who doesn't have a grandma and grandpa here, who doesn't have family here, and who may have been influenced in some way, somehow, to believe that, the natives here on this land, and when I say native, I was born here. I think we were all natives. We're all born here. Are bad people. They might have that influence. So I see letting these guys, these immigrants, be, soldiers for citizenship as very, very dangerous, and we need to look at that very closely.
Yeah, I mean, the people coming across the border are not people who obey the law, right? They're violating the law, so they're willing to do something illegal. Two, with the way that things have been kind of shaping up here politically, it does seem like the Democratic establishment is waging a political and legal war against the Republicans, so I think it would absolutely benefit them for the legalization of their future Democratic voters, and if something like this would pass, pass, I think this would be the end of any kind of Republican rule in all jurisdictions, as of course a lot of people would take advantage of this. And if you look at U.S. veterans, they get a lot less benefits than illegal immigrants. And a lot of U.S. veterans are disgruntled. They're pissed off. What are you going to have when you have a whole bunch of people from Latin America, Africa, and China pissed off that just became citizens that overwhelmingly vote Democrat that are also illegal? That's a question and concern that a lot of people are bringing for this kind of larger question of giving them citizenship through service.
I think the real solution to these illegals is just stop with the welfare. Because if they're not getting the meal ticket, if they're coming here for the meal ticket, they're the wrong kind of people. Like the guy who converts his 1952 Chevy, Bel Air over in Cuba and makes it into a boat and sails it to Miami. That's the guy I want to be my neighbor, not the guy that's walking across that got a free ticket from a Soros organization, got a train ride, a plane ride, and a bus ride up through Mexico to the Texas border, and then got $2,200 cash, and then maybe goes through the border 2 or 3 more times while he's up in an area to get some more cash. Get rid of welfare. Welfare is devolving the country, and whether it's Republican welfare recipients or Democrat welfare recipients, I can set very clear examples of how it's degenerating each and every generation. If there's no welfare for these people, if there's no free meal ticket, they're going to go back to their countries. They're going to find their way back to their countries. I worked with a whole bunch of so-called undocumented Mexican guys when I was living in Colorado on a huge crop production farm. And those guys were hard workers. They had wonderful culture. They cared about their family. And their incentive was to not even stay in America. They were just going to work here for like 10 years and pocket and send all their money home. In fact, I introduced these guys to Bitcoin so they could securely send their money back. I got a bunch of guys swapping their money into Bitcoin, shipping it back down to Mexico, sending it to their family.
What year was this?
2013 through 2015. In fact,
dude, you turned a bunch of those dudes super wealthy.
yes. One of these guys who I'm pretty good friends with, he is a multimillionaire just because he was sending every other paycheck or every third paycheck, he would buy Bitcoin with it and send it to his father. And he's like, oh yeah, we got beautiful houses, and
he's got the fanciest casita in all of Mexico.
Yes,
I'm pumped for him. That's awesome.
And when I was in Anarchapulco here, and I was in Acapulco for 2 weeks, and I got to know one of these guys that was working at the venue, the Secret Garden, where they hold the Anarchapulco event. He speaks Spanish pretty good. He said he worked in the U.S. for a little while, but he's afraid of the U.S. He's like, I don't want to be there. He goes, it's crazy there. And he's like, and he says all the bad people from Mexico, the ones that we don't want, is basically what he was saying, are ones that are going to the U.S. And he said it was the same thing for like either Venezuela or Ecuador. It wasn't the good people leaving, and they're happy to send their trash, is the way he put it, out of their country. And in New Hampshire, we have people talking about, oh, we got to come up with some money and just get these welfare recipients and these Democrats out of New Hampshire, and we'll buy them a plane ticket to California, and they sign a contract, they'll never come back to New Hampshire. I don't know how you'd ever enforce that, but it's a pipe dream. But it's sort of the same philosophy with a lot of these Latin countries, that they're happy to export their garbage to the U.S., and that's just what these guys say.
We're going to continue the conversation on Rumble, and Laverne, we're going to ask you if you would support cutting welfare, specifically all on Rumble. But before we do that, we wanted to tell everyone, hey, the conversation ends on YouTube, it ends on Facebook, it ends on Twitter, it ends on Kick, but continues on rumble.com. Again, rumble.com/WeAreChange is the place to find this conversation, as of course you could find us on the front page on Picks. Tucker Carlson is actually live right now, so is Glenn Greenwald, so is Donald Trump. We are right there next to them on the Rumble front page. So all you have to do is go to Rumble, go to the front page, and then once you go to the front page, you can find us right here on the picks section and category, or just go to rumble.com/WeAreChange. It's important to vote with your clicks. This is one way to do it, and to incentivize free speech and free speech platforms standing up for independent content creators. Rumble does that more than anyone else. We do have a significant audience everywhere else. So as we go to Rumble, Laverne, where can people find you and support your work?
They can go to my website, and that's lavernespicer.com.
Jay, where can people find you?
People can go to my website. That's jaynoon.com, and that is JAY NOONE.com.
We have more viewers than Glenn Greenwald right now. In your face, Glenn. You heroic journalist, I love you so much. I'm just giving you a hard time, buddy. At Liberty Lock Pod on X. If you want to support my work, you could subscribe there. I'll follow you back. Liberty Lockdown's the show. Clint Russell's the name. I also co-host Tower Gang. But most importantly, pick up your phone right now and go to your favorite podcast app and search for Liberty Lockdown and search for the best political show and click subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Steph
has some serious questions about the very confusing confusing content that Clint just released on his show.
Tower Gang. It's a very big question. I don't understand it at all. He says don't watch it. I agree. Don't watch it. It's weird. Anyways, you can find me at Steph WRC on X and Steph WeAreChange on Instagram.
All right, we're officially going off of YouTube, as of course we are also going to be taking callers in about 30 minutes from members of LukeUnfiltered.com. So if you are a member, we already have a couple people lining up. We might be able to take a number of callers. Again, also don't forget this Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, Clint gets in a cake and a mankini and jumps out for you during our in real life meetup that's going to be taking place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida this March 2nd.